hi guys, it's me, Debbie, here on a Sunday night about 9:30, and over the past several nights I have played host to a bunch of wacky people. I've let a bunch of wacky people talk on my show. I've had the Jew and the guys, and tonight's my night. And I have had something that I was going to bring to you guys that I've been kind of holding back on, but I'm now going to present what I consider to be some of the most glaring evidence in the murder of the beloved JFK, and I will start that now. All right, here we go.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. I pledge you that we shall neither commit nor provoke aggression, that we shall neither flee nor invoke the threat of force, that we shall never negotiate out of fear, and we shall never fear to negotiate. Terror is not a new weapon. Throughout history, it has been used by those who could not prevail, either by persuasion or example. But inevitably they fail, either because men are not afraid to die for a life worth living, or because the terrorists themselves came to realize that free men cannot be frightened by threats, and that aggression would meet its own response. And it is in the light of that history that every nation today should know, be he friend or foe, that the United States has both the will and the weapons to join free men in standing up to their responsibilities. All free men, wherever they may live, are citizens of Berlin. And therefore, as a free man, I take pride in the words, Ich bin ein Berliner. The path we have chosen for the present is full of hazards, as all paths are. But it is the one most consistent with our character and courage as a nation and our commitments around the world. The cost of freedom is always high, but Americans have always paid it. And one path we shall never choose, and that is the path of surrender or submission. We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win, and the others too. I believe in an America where the separation of church and state is absolute, where no Catholic prelate would tell the president, should he be Catholic, how to act, and no Protestant minister would tell his parishioners for whom to vote, where no church or church school is granted any public funds or political preference, and where no man is denied public office merely because his religion differs from the president who might appoint him or the people who might elect him. I have therefore chosen this time and place to discuss a topic on which ignorance too often abounds and the truth too rarely perceived, and that is the most important topic on earth: peace. What kind of a peace do I mean, and what kind of a peace do we seek? Everybody hurts sometimes.
Well, I think it's pretty much impossible to seek peace in this world, because peace does not exist in this world, because this world is full of very evil people, people that are broken, people that are coward, people that are scared, people that blame others for their actions, people that are, and when you have a majority that is corrupt. Most of the people I've ever met in my life are corrupt to a certain degree. And I have always been baffled by corruption. I don't understand it. I don't see why people cannot just simply be good. I never understood it. One of my best friends, Annette, will tell you one of the oldest sayings that I've always said is, you got to be nice. You got to be nice, man. I would see people fall around me for different things, and I'd say, you got to be nice. And what I mean by that is not rotten. Not, and everybody, most people that I've known, like I said, I could go and name names. I could go and name instances. I could tell you stories of people that are rotten. I mean, rotten to the core. And this goes, I am but one person. I am one grain of sand. So you can imagine how rotten people can be. It's been said before that the human is one of the only animals on this planet that just kill. They don't kill. We don't kill because we're starving. We just kill. We just kill out of meanness. Just out of just simple meanness. I have seen acts in my life before that were astonishing to me. It's hard to imagine that a human could do that to another human. What would cause that? What could have happened to that person that they weren't able to overcome that would cause them to be that seedy and mean and awful? I've heard of people doing things to animals before that make me literally want to break things. Want to just, I mean, literally. I could tell you story after story after story, but I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to prove to you, and in the memory of people in my family, that I sat and watched tear up when they talked about this man, when they talked about his legacy. I'm going to prove to myself and to my listeners and to my future descendants, whoever they are. I mean, somebody could be listening to this right now in the year 2025, and I'm still alive and looking great. No, I'm joking. I'm going to show you guys. If anything, I'm going to expose it to you, and then you make your mind up. If I tell you that A, B, and C were there, you make your mind up. Now, over the last week, in some downtime that I've had, I have taken it upon myself to do research on the topic of, over the last several years, not 20 or 30, but over the last, say, 5 years, 10 years, even further back than that, in the general opinion, who has brought forth one of the best, most sound, most reliable, most with the most proof, evidence that John F. Kennedy was in fact killed as under a conspiracy. Okay? And in all my research, and I've even gone and talked to some of the old folks, I know a police officer that was actually there the day it happened. He was actually downtown around Tealy Plaza. These people know things. So I present to you tonight in its entirety what I consider to be, after my research, and I've seen a lot of things, what I consider to be the most reliable of all time presentations of what happened in Dallas, Texas on November the 22nd, 1963 in Dealey Plaza. And I will be here with you the whole time. This aired in 1992.
You can describe these trajectories, but it just doesn't hold up because you see Mr. Kennedy hanging there forever with his throat wound, with his fingers on his throat, and Mr. Connolly slowly turning and realizing it, holding on to his Stetson. He could not have been hit by the same bullet. It would have gone through him by that time. It's a key piece of evidence that shows you that there had to be more than 3 shots, and that the fatal headshot did come from the front.
With the proper equipment and with the parade route set up, it's a cinch to kill the president, and they did it.
There was a conspiracy, there was a plan to kill and murder our president, which they did.
The ZR rifle program was an assassination program.
America has 3 great unsolved mysteries. The Cuban Missile Crisis, the unexplained reasons for Watergate, and the assassination of John F. Kennedy. Up to now, those 3 events have been thought of as separate. You're about to discover that they are tied together. They are the keys to understanding the conspiracy to assassinate John F. Kennedy.
Hello. I'm James Earl Jones. Many mysteries surround the death of John F. Kennedy. Now, we're going to offer you brand new answers to the old questions. Who killed John F. Kennedy? Why did they do it? And how were they able to keep it covered up for all these years? You'll see who knew about it and how it began.
At that time, I go to Ferry's house, and Oswald's there, and Shaw's there, and Ferry's there, and Cubans are there, and all I hear is anti-Kennedy, anti-Castro, what are we going to do? And Ferry's walking back and forth. And then someone came up with an idea, well, if you can't get Castro, you get Kennedy, and blame it on somebody that likes Castro, and then the U.S. will go to war.
Oh, what you got to do is
He said this would have to be done in a triangulation. He said the triangulation of crossfire, that was Ferry's idea.
You'll see who carried it out.
I have worked on presidential protection. I know there's more than one gunman. They know what they're doing. They have the right weapons. Everything is set up. It's a profession.
You'll see who was behind it.
It's not some external conspiracy that came from outside. This was something that happened at the heart of the deep American political system.
And you'll see how it has been covered up for all these years.
Well, there was a rash of deaths, many violent deaths. The deaths follow certain patterns.
Plus, you'll see how it all connects to Watergate. Facts, photos, evidence never revealed anywhere before. Our guests on the show are people the public rarely gets to see. Agents of the CIA, the Pentagon, and the KGB, who deal in top-secret operations. Investigators who are speaking to us despite a congressional gag order. Doctors with startling new medical evidence. Witnesses and friends of Lee Harvey Oswald. What you see and hear may startle you, but it is all backed up with proof. Who killed Kennedy? Why did they do it? And who is the group behind it? But this information does not come without a price. People have died to get it out. Some of our guests are right now receiving death threats. But their goal, like ours, is to finally shed some light on a dark chapter of American history. Join us now for the JFK conspiracy. Kennedy was killed in a conspiracy. I think you'll soon see that. To help us understand the who and the why, with us are a former chief of covert operations for the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Colonel Fletcher Prouty, a high-ranking member of the KGB, Colonel Nichiforenko, the highest-ranking CIA official to go public, Victor Marchetti, the man who put the Kennedy assassination back in the limelight, Oliver Stone, the forensic pathologist with startling new medical evidence, Dr. Cyril Wecht, plus witnesses, friends, investigators, military experts, and many others. But first, let's go back to that day in Dallas. The day was November 22nd, the time shortly before noon. It had rained earlier, but when John Kennedy arrived in Dallas, the sun was shining. As a result, the Secret Service left off the clear, bulletproof bubble top from the limousine. At first, the crowds were thick, but as the motorcade approached Dealey Plaza, people lining the route thinned to a trickle. And it was here that the motorcade violated the Secret Service's own rules. As the car turned, it slowed from 40 miles an hour to 7. It was precisely then that gunshots blasted out. For 6 seconds, the occupants of Kennedy's car were struck by bullets. Kennedy grasped for his throat. Connolly reacted as if he had been hit from behind. Kennedy's head exploded, driven with great force backwards and to the left. Then and only then did the president's car accelerate and speed off. Lyndon Johnson, the new president, ordered a federal commission to investigate the crime. Headed by Supreme Court Chief Justice Earl Warren, it became known as the Warren Commission. Hundreds of witnesses, thousands of hours of testimony, and when they were done, the Warren Commission announced that 3 shots had been fired from the 6th floor of the Texas School Book Depository, from above and behind the president, by a single crazed gunman, Lee Harvey Oswald. The Warren Commission had given us the official version. Lee Harvey Oswald had acted alone. But if all 3 shots had come from behind, then why did the president's head fly backwards? A reaction more typical of being shot from the front. And why did so many people, including policemen, run not towards the book depository where Oswald was, but towards the picket fence? If the Warren Commission was right, why did so many witnesses claim to see something completely different from the official report?
I believe with all of my heart that the shots came from behind the picket fence.
And I focused in on a gentleman with a suit and a hat standing here at the picket fence. I saw a puff of smoke, then I saw a man with a rifle. I was shocked. It was a brown rifle.
And I know enough about guns and hunting to know that he was shot from the front.
I saw the man in the suit and the hat pitch the gun to the railroad man, and he walked off in this direction.
Hundreds of witnesses, thousands of hours of testimony. Yet, these are eyewitnesses to the killing of the president, and the Warren Commission told us they didn't believe them. With us now is Jean Hill, who was closer to the president's car than anyone else at the time of the shooting. Ms. Hill is a Dallas grade school teacher and has feared for her life for the last 29 years. She's just written a book, JFK, The Last Dissenting Witness. And just last week, she received another death threat on the telephone. Ms. Hill, welcome.
Thank you.
What did the person who threatened you on the phone say?
Well, he said he thought that I had learned my lesson and had learned to shut up, but that they'd found out that I had a book coming out, and that if I said anything in the book, I would never live to enjoy it.
Why were you in Dealey Plaza that day?
Well, I went down there to take a picture of the president and also a good-looking motorcycle cop.
What were you doing just before the shots rang out?
Looking for a good place to be seen and wearing a red raincoat where I could be seen. And just as my friend started to take a Polaroid picture of the president as his car was coming abreast, the shots rang out. I mean, I jumped out in the street to yell at him to look this way, and the shots rang out. He grabbed his throat, and that was the horrible headshot.
How many shots did you hear?
4 to 6.
Did you see a gunman?
I saw smoke and a puff of smoke and a flash of light from the knoll where someone was shooting from behind the fence.
I understand that 2 men claiming to be Secret Service agents interrogated you after the assassination. What were you asked?
Well, they picked me up and took me to the courts building and shoved me in a room where there were 2 other men, assumed to be Secret Service also, and they asked me what I had seen. I told them that I'd seen the president hit, that I saw a shooter from the knoll, and that I'd heard 4 to 6 shots. But they told me I didn't hear but 3 shots. 3 bullets is all they had. 3 shots was all they were willing to say right then.
Well, did you go to Washington to speak to the Warren Commission?
No, because my boyfriend, who was a policeman, got word that possibly I would be killed on that trip, and so I did not go. But not long after, the Warren Commission came to Dallas, and they came out after me and took me to Parkland Hospital.
Were you ever interviewed by the Warren Commission?
Oh, yes. I was interviewed by our inspector, who was very, very, well, he tried very hard to discredit everything I said. He accused me of all kinds of things, from like a shabby marital affair to seeking publicity to just downright lying.
We have a telephone call. Suzanne H., New York City.
Yes, my question is for Jean Hill. Jean, are you sorry that you spoke up?
No, I've never been sorry that I spoke up. A little bit scared that I spoke up, but I wish I had told the truth then, but I don't think I'd be alive to tell the truth today had I spoke up so completely then.
As many as 177 people involved in this case have died suspiciously. Several Dallas policemen. A lot of people who questioned the official report died suspiciously. You'll learn more about this later. But now, we thought we'd tell you about the man the Warren Commission said was the lone gunman, Lee Harvey Oswald. Dallas police suspected Oswald of 2 crimes. One was killing the president. The other was the murder of a Dallas policeman named J.D. Tippit 45 minutes after Kennedy. It was a media frenzy. Within hours, we were told Oswald was a Marxist who handed out pro-Castro leaflets in New Orleans, that he was a communist who had defected to Russia, that he had renounced America and everything American, that he had married a Russian woman, and that he was a loner with a fascination for guns. This view of him was essential for the Warren Commission to explain his motives for assassinating the president.
Dispatches you people have been given, but I emphatically deny these charges.
Yet we didn't believe him. Why? Because everything we were told about Oswald fit our profile of a murderer. What if Lee Harvey Oswald was really a U.S. intelligence agent? Joining us now is Victor Marchetti, former executive assistant to the Deputy Director of the CIA under Richard Helms. Mr. Marchetti was at the CIA when Kennedy was assassinated. Mr. Marchetti, we know that Oswald lived in Russia. Was he a defector?
It's possible, but more likely he was a what we call a dangle. He was an American intelligence agent who was put out there for the Soviets to recruit in the hope that he could penetrate their intelligence service.
Did Oswald ever work for the CIA?
Not to my knowledge, and although the CIA might have been aware of his operations, the FBI would have been aware of the operations also, particularly when he came back to this country.
Well, did Oswald work for the FBI?
No, I don't believe he did. I think he was working with naval intelligence, but the FBI was coordinating on the operation, as was the CIA in the Soviet Union, of course, when he was there earlier.
Please explain what the Office of Naval Intelligence is.
Well, the Office of Naval Intelligence is the Navy's CIA, and that is probably the outfit that Oswald was working for.
Thank you. Oswald was a very mysterious person. To find out more about him, we have asked Ron Lewis, a friend of Oswald's, to join us. Oliver Stone, the director of the JFK movie, told us about Ron in his book, Flashback, The Untold Story of Lee Harvey Oswald.
Marina Oswald confirmed to me that Lewis did exist, and she remembered him because he bumped into her one day in New Orleans when she followed Lee to work.
Mr. Lewis, I understand that you work with Oswald in New Orleans.
We both worked for Guy Bannister, but he didn't pay us. We got paid from another source.
Who was Guy Bannister?
He was the head of the Chicago office of the FBI, and he also supplied guns for the Cuban refugees. And Lee told me this was a CIA operation.
What did Oswald do for Guy Bannister?
He went on to college campuses and he gathered information for the FBI. And he also recruited people to work for Guy Bannister.
Did Oswald ever handle gun shipments at 544 Camp Street?
He brought in a shipment of ammunition, and part of those were kept at 544 Camp Street. Part was taken in a laundry truck to Lake Pontchartrain. I remember this because the boxes were very heavy, and Lee was not a muscular person, and he sometimes said he was going to quit because of it.
Is it true that Oswald had worked with Jack Ruby in New Orleans?
He told me that Jack Ruby drove the laundry truck.
The Warren Commission said that Lee Harvey Oswald and Jack Ruby never knew each other. Are you saying that they did know each other?
They knew each other very well.
That makes us wonder how much else in the Warren Commission report regarding Oswald is incorrect. To prove that Oswald was a lone gunman, they had to fit him into an extremely tight schedule. So we went back to Dallas to trace the fateful 3/4 of an hour from Kennedy's assassination to the murder of Officer Tippit. We began in the Texas School Book Depository. On the left, you see the time Oswald had to meet. On the right, you see a clock, synchronized to the speed of the film. This is the time it actually took us. Ready. At 12:33, the Warren Commission said Oswald left the depository and walked 7 blocks to catch a bus. They gave him 3 minutes. 3 minutes, but it took us 6.5. Meanwhile, after traveling a couple of blocks, the bus was caught in an immense traffic jam. They said he got off the bus. At 12:48, they said Oswald climbed into a taxi. They gave him 6 minutes to reach his next stop. It took us over 8 without traffic. The commission said Oswald entered his boarding house at 1 o'clock. At 1:03, his landlady said he left the house and went to the northbound bus stop. Yet in order to kill Officer Tippit, he had to travel south. So the commission said he must have changed his mind. Witnesses all said that Tippit was killed no later than 1:10, and that was after the policeman and his killer had a conversation. 7 minutes. Oswald simply didn't have enough time. In every case, the commission failed the time test, and we had no congested traffic to deal with. But Oswald never got his chance to tell his side of the story. Instead, in the most secure area of police headquarters, he was gunned down by a man named Jack Ruby. The murderer of President Kennedy was dead. And we were told the case was closed. But if the Warren Commission was wrong about the time schedule, perhaps they were also wrong in telling us he was a pro-communist in New Orleans.
He comes to New Orleans. He comes in and joins a group which he's supposed to be a left-wing Marxist. He isn't. He's a right-wing fascist. This is the real Oswald.
All we gotta do is get Kennedy in the open. 3 tickets. We'll get him in a triangulation crossfire.
Blow away the president.
We'll use a diversionary shot. Someone we can sacrifice. Then we'll get him for real with the other 2 shots.
David.
We know people who can do it. You know we do. We'll kill Kennedy, and nobody will know who did it.
Bear in mind that Oswald was not the only so-called defector to the Soviet Union in that time frame. That there was like 6 or 7 young men, all impoverished, all from the same background as Oswald, who supposedly defected to the Soviet Union in that same time zone of 58, 59. One man went over the month before Oswald, Webster. He's still alive, and he's an interesting parallel to Oswald. So I think these men were all part of a defection program. Oswald could have been one of many defectors that were used, put in place in Soviet Union, acquire a Soviet profile. You don't have to do any work for the CIA in Russia. You don't have to do any work for the KGB. You just go, live, come back. That's enough. And then any of those 6 guys could have been used in any 6 spots in the globe to do work as communist dupes, frontmen, classic double agents. They weren't into money at all, these guys. They were really into loyalty. They were spies for being spies' sake. They were young. They were penniless, but they were devoted to the concept of being a spy. And there was glory to that. It wasn't about money. That's why Lee was always busted. This whole time, he was real. He always had enough money, though, which is his IRS records are not released, which is an interesting side effect of this. But I'm sure he got the money when he needed it to get in and out of Russia. But he wasn't interested in money. He was interested in the aesthetic and the ideology of spying and power and political power. I spent a little time in the marina with the daughters. I don't know if she really ever understood him either completely. He had a secret life. Unquestionably, he had a part of his life separate from her, and he resented any invasion of that privacy. He wouldn't tell her where he was going a lot, disappear. He had all the makings of, not a loner, but really a member of a secret organization. And she said to me very clearly, she believes that he was being used by some kind of other force, and by which I think she meant an intelligence agency that was using her husband. She feels that he would never have killed the president because he liked the president.
Oswald spent a lot of time in New Orleans. The Warren Commission told us it was because he was pro-Castro, hell-bent on converting others to his Marxist ways. Oliver Stone's movie, JFK, deals with the New Orleans connection.
544 Camp Street, as shown in the film, is significant because it slipped one day into one of the pamphlets. It was the only connection ever of Oswald to the Bannister office. What is Oswald, if he's a lone nut communist, doing, working out of, in some sense, Bannister's operation at 544 Camp?
The office belonged to Guy Bannister, formerly with the FBI. Not only was this addressed on Oswald's supposedly pro-Castro leaflets, but the account Oswald used to print the leaflets belonged to the CIA. In fact, everything about that address was connected to the CIA.
It was a CIA operation where they had the Cubans and they were training these people, and they had trucks going there with unloading rifles in there.
Witnesses placed Oswald there. They even heard him offer to train anti-Castro Cubans.
I'll teach these guys guerrilla warfare tactics.
Yeah.
But he wasn't the only one to share that office.
E. Howard Hunt set up a CIA dummy organization called the Cuban Revolutionary Council. The headquarters for the Cuban Revolutionary Council were none other than 544 Camp Street in New Orleans.
Howard Hunt with the CIA, Guy Bannister with the FBI, and Lee Harvey Oswald, all in the same office. Today there's evidence that Oswald only pretended to be pro-Castro. More likely, intelligence agent on assignment.
All of this, I believe, was part of the intelligence community's attempt to both establish a left cover for Oswald, to suggest that he was pro-Castro.
He was not left-wing. I don't care what the Warren Commission said. It is dead wrong.
Perry Russo was a college student in 1963 when he met the real Oswald, the right-wing intelligence community Oswald.
What the hell's he doing here?
What do you mean, what am I doing here? What the hell are you doing here? I gave him some expletives back, and then Ferry jumped in between us and said, oh, he's all right, he's a friend of mine. He was in the wrong house to be a left-wing Marxist because you're dealing with rabid right-wing fascists that were violent in their desire to overthrow Fidel.
Oswald had gone to the right-wing Cubans a few days before, and then he goes out in the street right in front and starts becoming a left-winger a couple of days later. So the right-wing Cubans go crazy. They attack Oswald. They attack him first, but he gets arrested.
The moment he got to jail, an FBI agent named Regis Kennedy rushed down to see him.
Regis Kennedy was an FBI agent. Lee Harvey Oswald was an informer for Regis Kennedy. It was a source of information for him. Now,
Dave Ferry told investigators about the connection between the FBI and Oswald.
We received 19 files. Reference was made in those files to the Central Intelligence Agency contract number of Lee Harvey Oswald and the FBI informant number S172 of Oswald and the $200 a month stipend that he was receiving.
Bannister connected to the FBI, Ferry with the CIA, Oswald with contract numbers at both, all together in an office shared by Howard Hunt of the CIA. But one other person was also there, a man named Clay Shaw, the only person ever to be charged in court with the conspiracy to assassinate President Kennedy. Very different portrait of Oswald than that painted by the Warren Commission. Mr. Marchetti, who was Clay Shaw?
Clay Shaw was a businessman who was involved in international commerce and had quite a few connections overseas, operating his trademark there in New Orleans.
How did you find out about Clay Shaw's connection to the CIA?
Well, at the time of the Garrison trial for Clay Shaw, I was working on the director of the CIA staff, and he had a morning meeting every day in which he had his 12 top lieutenants and a few staff officers. And one day he looked at the chief of the clandestine services and he said, "Are we giving that guy all the help we can down there in New Orleans?" And he was referring to Clay Shaw. And he said, because we don't want that, words to the effect, we don't want that crazy guy down there causing any trouble. He was referring to Jim Garrison. And I thought that was kind of surprising. After the meeting, I asked the director's assistant why he brought this up.
Let me explain something to you guys that I was involved in one time that might shed a little bit of light on hearsay or just testimony. A long time ago, I was involved in a situation where we were going to pull off the ultimate practical joke. It involved me and my girlfriend Annette, and what we were going to do is we were going to prove that we could smoke weed in the Dallas County Courthouse. Okay? And if I were to give testimony to this, I would say that we were all together after work, and I said, hey, wouldn't it be funny if we were to smoke a joint live in the courtroom? And Annette said, no. What would be even funnier is if we were to smoke in the holdover cell. Because the holdover cell behind every court in Dallas County is a jail cell, and each clerk of the court were always left with a key. And it looked just like the keys that you think about, the skeleton keys. And I said, no. What would be even better is if we did it in the jury room, where the actual juries deliberated on people's futures, you know, whether they got acquitted, whether they got found guilty. And that's what we did. So we all three of us snuck back there to the jury room, the one behind the court. And I believe it was Annette or her, I don't believe it was me, that pulled out the, today they say blunt, it was a joint. And we fired it up right there. And I remember I took a hit, she took a hit, and I think all three of us took a couple of hits off of it, and then we snuffed it out, and we left. Now, do you believe me? Do you believe that really happened? Yeah, it did. I swear to God it did. I was there. Were there pictures? Were there video? No. But yeah, it happened. Absolutely. I was there. And we laughed and we laughed and we laughed about it. For quite a long time we laughed about it. We thought it was funny that we had pulled like this big stunt in the Dallas County Courthouse, and it was actually in the judge's chambers that I worked for, because he was such an asshole. And he was an asshole. This guy was known as the hang judge. He was so mean. He was so mean that attorneys would never do open pleas in court. Hell no. So that's basically what you're listening to here. You're listening to people that were there at the time of what happened and their testimony. What you just heard was my testimony.
But I was told to be quiet. Later in the day, the director's assistant came over to me and said, look, Clay Shaw used to work for us. He was a contact of ours. And he did a lot of things for us. And this guy Garrison is digging into his background, and he may bring this out. It would be very embarrassing to the agency. And that's why we want to help Shaw.
I see. Well, did Oswald ever work for Clay Shaw?
I think he probably did, from everything I know, but I did not know that in the agency.
Ron Lewis, do you know if he ever worked for Clay Shaw?
Lee was paid by Clay Shaw to distribute leaflets in front of the International Trade Mart. But Lee told me this was just a front.
Was Oswald involved in the plan to kill Kennedy?
He knew there was a plot to kill Kennedy, but he didn't want anything to do with it. But eventually he became involved with them.
Well, who was supposed to kill Kennedy?
He told me that Roscoe White. was supposed to kill Kennedy. He was to be one of the trigger men.
Thank you, sir. Later in the show, you'll actually hear from the KGB. Oswald's past was hidden all these years as part of a cover-up. The truth, had it been known, had it come out, would have revealed there was a conspiracy. The conspiracy to kill the president needed a scapegoat, a patsy, someone who would take the blame. That's because there was a need for us to be directed away from the evidence, away from the...
Now, if we were afraid that we were going to get caught smoking weed in the jury room behind Criminal District Court Number 5, where I was the chief clerk, we would have pre-thought this, and we probably would have got a patsy. We would have said, I would have said something along the lines, now wait a minute, that day we took an open plea for possession with the intent to deliver of marijuana. And that guy, that defendant, was put in the holdover cell. But Debbie, it's the jury room. The jury room. Right, Okay, stop, think. Okay. We had a jury that came to a close last Friday, and nobody's been in there since. And we would find a patsy. That's what they had to do. They had to find a patsy, somebody that would look guilty. Do you see what I'm trying to set up here? I'm trying to show you that this is just basically a coup d'etat that happened on a very grand scale. Well, why didn't we know about it? Well, why don't we know about anything right now? Nobody questions our government. Nobody. And we've got that power. We just go every 4 years and we just do our that's all we do. Just like the sheeple that we are. You know, we just go and vote. Nobody says anything. Nobody. We don't believe that the government works for us. It's our government. Government of the people, by the people, for the people. Whatever. I wasn't a political I didn't have a poli-sci degree. I hated poli-sci. My brother loved poli-sci. My brother actually did. I wish my brother would call in. My brother actually did one of his big papers on JFK. Now, if you really want to know in your own spare time how the actual thing went down, how it all happened in a beautiful, put-together form, watch the film JFK, period. You can believe me or you cannot believe me. That's your business. You can believe that I smoked marijuana in the judge's chamber, in the jury box, in the jury room, hello, at 600 Commerce with 2 other people. Or not. I could care less. When you're presented the facts and you elect to just put up a wall, oh, I don't believe that. I believe you're selling yourself short for your entire life. When you don't believe anything because it seems something far-fetched or something that you would never do. Oh, she would never do that. Bullshit if we didn't. I was so high one time coming back from lunch with Annette, getting on the elevator to go up to the 6th floor, that a district attorney by the name of Robert Smith whispered to me when I got off the elevator. He said, "You smell like weed." I went, oops. He loved me. He knew that I was a good clerk, a good worker. You know, besides the fact that I was probably cute or whatever, he said, "You smell like weed." So I went and I got some gum and I went to the restroom and I washed my face and my hands and all that kind of stuff. Like I've told y'all, I'm no goody two-shoes. I just had a group of people that made everybody think that I was. I'm not. I'm no better than anybody else. Have I ever committed a major crime? No, not really. Nah. I've never hurt anybody. I've never done anything to hurt anybody. I've never been involved in anything that was going to hurt somebody. Maybe a couple of financial situations, but what the fuck. Now, there's one troll out there that says, did you know that Debbie embezzled $40,000 from her attorney? That was a joke. It was a joke. It was a joke, and then again, it was partly true. And what it was is I worked for one of Dallas's biggest criminal defense lawyers in the history of Dallas. You can do your own research. His name was Robert M. Rose. He was so shady after I quit working for him that he got disbarred. And Robert was very rich. I mean, extremely rich. In fact, there is a story written about him online in the Dallas Observer that is very, very, very lengthy. And it tells the story of what happened. Well, I was having dinner one night with my brother-in-law, who at the time was the U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Texas. He didn't work for him. He was the U.S. Attorney, which means he was the federal, he sat at the top. And we were joking around, and I said, boy, you think you got him for that much money? I said, you don't know anything. And he goes, Debbie, please don't tell me that. I might have to subpoena you to as a witness. I went, oh, fuck. And I knew about lots of cash. Cash. We took in schmoodles of cash because we represented the biggest, and I mean the biggest, drug dealers in Dallas County. We represented Jaime Corona. We represented Esteban. We represented people in the Cuban cartel. We represented a lot of people. And if you really think hard and long about what I did, who I was married to, you'll figure out what I'm talking about here. Huh? Get the picture? All right. Having said that, I would be out on the town. This was way before I had kids. I'd be out on the town just, hanging out with all my girls, and I'd run to Robert, and I'd go, Robert, I need some money. He'd go, Debbie, are you going to do drugs with this money? What are you going to do? And he would just rip off 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, just cash. He had wads of cash on him that you would not believe. And there were even rumors going around that whenever he was a big jogger. He was a runner. He run. That was where I got running from. I was such a runner that for the first Christmas that I was with Victor, I was so pissed off. I was ready because I'd been dating Victor since April of that year. And I was all excited that I was going to get some kind of really pretty piece of jewelry. You know what I got? I got running shoes and a Walkman. Oh, boy. I was like, oh, boy, this is really... But then for Valentine's Day, I got a ring. It was really pretty. But anyway, I ran all the time with him. I couldn't keep up with him because he was a marathon runner. He did the Dallas Marathon Runner. He did the Turkey Trot. He did the New York Marathon. He did the Boston Marathon. He did marathons everywhere. And he was always coming in. He would get out of court. I ran the office. I ran the entire thing I ran. There were people that would not do business with him if I were not his office manager. There are documents today that state, I will loan you this amount of money as long as Deborah is the office manager. Because when I came in, I cleaned house. I have always been the way I am right now, which is really honest at heart. When I walked in, whenever I got fired. I got fired at the Dallas County Courthouse, and I'll tell you that story. That's an interesting story. When I left one court, I was sent to open another court for a judge that had won by election. Now, you can either be appointed or you can be elected. If you're elected, you usually got a big head. This judge came from the state. He was called a state judge, which means he was never a defense lawyer. He was an asshole. But I was sent to open up his court because he said, I want one of the best clerks in here to help me set my court up. Well, the first thing I did was I took these envelopes and I wrote the judge's name on one, then the court reporter on one, the first district attorney, the second and the third, and then the first, second, third, probation officer, blah, 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 blah. And I told everybody, now listen, guys, these are your envelopes. You will need to check these for phone messages. When you're in court, this is where they'll be. All right? And then I had a girl under me. I had an assistant under me. Well, one day, about the second week I worked there, the judge comes off the bench and he says, "Come into my chambers." And I said, "Is he talking to me?" And my assistant said, "Yeah." I said, "Your Honor, do you need me?" I walked there. He goes, "Close the door." I said, What's wrong? "Did you get a call from my wife while I was in trial?" "Yes, sir." "And you didn't bring that out there to the bench?" "No, sir." "Why not?" I said, "Because I don't believe that messages from my wife that say, 'I'm not going to meet you at lunch,' are an emergency situation that should be taken to the bench and interrupt a trial." "Oh, really?" he said. "Do you know that I left out of the front door of the courthouse to go run to meet her downtown?" I said, that's not my problem. You should check with me every time you get off that bench to see if I have got messages." I walk back out, sit down, ring, ring, ring. "Debbie, can I see you down here in the district clerk's office?" I went, fuck, I'm gone. Now, I didn't get so much fired as I got pulled out of that court. On the way down there, this is a true story. I'm walking down the hallway and I'm crying. I run into Robert. "What's wrong, Debbie?" I said, "I'm not working here anymore. Fuck them." "What? Wait a minute. What do you mean you're not working here anymore?" I go home to my apartment in North Dallas that I lived at alone, and there was a message on my answering machine from Robert saying, "Don't move until you hear from me." And I was like, what? Here I was all excited that I was going to get about a week off to lay out in the sun, fuck off, go out, get drunk. He wanted me to go to work for him the next day. He fired his secretary named Nancy and put me in her spot. I didn't know what I was doing. But I knew one thing. I knew that there was some shady shit going on in that office, and I was there to clean it up. I would scream at the top of my lungs at Robert. So much that our associate that was there moved out because he said he was tired of the fighting. I would have a poor little Mexican man come in and say, "Hello, I'm here to pay Mr. Robert for my case." And he would say, "I forfeited that bond. I'm not on that case." And I said, "You listen to me, you stupid piece of fucking shit. You greedy Jewish son of a bitch. You're damn sure not going to go off that case. That poor man has been out mowing lawns to pay you. And how dare you?" It got so bad that I took over all of the finances. He couldn't touch a penny. Okay? His mother owned the Zales Corporation. She came flying in one day, walked in the office, and she said, "I am so delighted to meet you in person. I cannot thank you for what you have done to my son." I literally turned him around. I gave him a docket sheet that he had as many as 35 people set in one morning for docket. I hired an assistant, my best friend, who worked under me, and I went to court every day. With him, I did all the city cases. He did the county cases. I made sure that lickety-split, that docket was taken care of. Then I gave orders to Kim to produce a accounts payable department, and she did. There was a list of every rent house that we owned, what was owed every month, who we owed every month, how much we owed every month, when the payments were made. It was done like a clock, just like this. Click, click. Well, I guess you could say that it all came to a head one day when we had moved under Wendell Turley. Wendell Turley is one of the biggest attorneys in Dallas, Texas, and we had moved under him, and I was continuing to man the office. At this time, I had my own office, and I was knocking down $65,000 a year plus. That was what was on the books, okay? Get married, one thing leads to another, blah, 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 and I show up, beep, pregnant. Walk into his office, I said, "I'm gone, I'm pregnant." He goes, "Wait, stop. I go, "Nope, I'm gone. I'm fed up anyway, I'm gone." I literally walk out. The next day at my house where I lived with Victor, There was a ding-dong at the doorbell. I looked up, and there was a limousine out in the front. It was Robert's mother. She came over begging me, "You've got to come back." No, I'm not. "Debbie, we will double your salary. You've got to come back." No. In 3 years, he was disbarred.
Fact that Kennedy was hit by 3 gunmen firing from different positions. In a conspiracy that would embroil the nation in a cover-up so great that 12 years later it would lead to the Watergate break-in.
How many people think I had something to do with his disbarment? Well, think about it. My brother-in-law at the time was the prosecuting federal attorney, right? I didn't even know about it. I found out they wanted him for a long time because he was very boisterous, he was very in your face, he was very shiny, he was very ha 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 ha, and they wanted him in a bad way. In the interim, he had gotten married to a girl, a young girl that I couldn't stand, but I was nice to. I had gone to the the thing's called the bat mitzvah, where they do the circumcision. I'd gone to that, dressed to the nines. I'll never forget when I walked in there. He was like, "Oh my God!" I hadn't seen him in 2 years, and he was there, and he said, "I am not being a good boy." I said, "What are you talking about, Robert?" He said, "I've been a naughty boy in my marriage." Well, one thing led to another. She found out he was cheating. She was his downfall. She took him down. Her and her family took him down because he was cheating on her horribly. And if I had been called into that case, I would have had to testify that, yes, he did tell me that he was not being a quote-unquote good boy in his marriage. And I told him that. I said, "Robert, don't tell me this." And she took him down. So all that, the 30 seconds that I let your suspense build, it wasn't me that took him down. In fact, it broke my heart because, well, I'll tell you why. It broke my heart, and then again it didn't, and I'll tell you why. Because I knew in my heart of hearts that he was a dirty, rotten scoundrel. How do I know that? Because there was one time we made major investments with the Roger Staubach Corporation, okay? We got involved in the McKinney 7.2. We got involved in so many things, and I was right there next to him. I, in fact, was best friends with Calvin Cooper. I called him Callie. Callie was the director of the Staubach Corporation. The Staubach Corporation was a major investment corporation that bought huge pieces of land. One day, he called me into his office, and he said, "Debbie, I need you to call..." Well, I won't tell you who it was. It was a close friend of his, and tell him that I'm sending him back his investment because it fell through. 3 weeks later, we cashed a ticket where we quadrupled our investment. You see what I'm saying? See, what he would do is when we would go into one, he would buy me a small interest in it. Like he would say, "I'm going to buy you a $5,000 interest," and then I would slowly but surely pay him back. So much money changed hands back and forth and back and forth and back and forth that by the time it was said and done, with the time that I worked for him, one time on my show on Blog Talk Radio, I said, "I must have embezzled $40,000 from this guy." Okay, what I mean by embezzle was just off the books money that he had given me. And I just jokingly said embezzled. Well, this mullet, this idiot, makes videos. He makes all this kind of show. Debbie embezzled money from him. They're still talking about it today in chat rooms sometimes. I'll see this mullet. Okay. "No, Debbie embezzled $40,000 from her attorney." It's so funny to look at them. And the way they just claw and scratch. They look like the inside of a train car back in, well, you know what I mean? It's ridiculous the way they are. And I find them amusing, and I sit back and I watch it sometimes in chat rooms. I'll just giggle and think, "Oh, there they go again." But, in a way, I have them to thank for some of my listeners, because had they not gone so crazy talking about me back then, I might not be where I'm at, because they really did bring a lot of people to me. Also, my being in ghost chat rooms so much and chatting, that brought a lot of people to me. But anyway, I know. All right, here we go back with, we're about halfway through, so pay attention. Here we go to what happened.
God, so help me God.
Kennedy was not told about the existence of escorts.
The
This secret was kept from him by Allen Dulles, director of the CIA. However, Kennedy was briefed on the other aspects of Operation 40.
We must never be lulled into believing that either power has yielded its ambition for world domination.
In April 1961, he ordered thousands of Cuban refugees, trained and equipped by the CIA, to invade Cuba. This operation became known as the Bay of Pigs.
It was really a good plan because early in the planning they brought in Marines who were specifically trained for over-the-beach operations.
But it turned into a disaster when somebody in the chain of command double-crossed Kennedy and canceled the final bombing run. Kennedy did not order the planes to stand down, but he was blamed. John Kennedy was suddenly hated by the Cuban exiles and all those who supported them.
We'll kill Kennedy, and nobody will know what did it.
Because Cuba was protected by the Soviet Union, Kennedy had to placate Khrushchev. He promised he would cease all CIA-related operations. But he also tried to placate the Cuban exiles. So he changed his mind and continued operations against Cuba. Kennedy's actions led to the Cuban Missile Crisis. Khrushchev found out that Kennedy lied to him and had continued CIA operations against Cuba. What Kennedy did was simply rename Operation 40 Operation Mongoose. Mr. Sheehan, what did Khrushchev do when he found out that Kennedy lied to him?
Well, what he did was to agree to send missiles to Cuba and to send some bombers into Cuba to start to fortify Cuba against what
I just read on my iPhone where it says the judges' chambers is on your bucket list. No, darling, the judges' chambers is locked up tighter than Dick's hat band. Nobody can get into a judge's chambers. There's like 3 different locks, 3 different keys, 3 different codes. You cannot get into the chambers, trust me. Not that I would if I could. Maybe.
Expected was a future threatened invasion again of Cuba by Kennedy's Cuban forces.
And how close did we come to a nuclear war?
Well, it was pretty extraordinary. What happened, obviously, is the United States picked up the transport of these missiles on ships coming to Cuba and confronted Khrushchev. Kennedy confronted Khrushchev and told him that they were drawing a line in the ocean along a particular longitude, and if any of these missiles, new missiles, crossed this line, we would technically be in a state of war with the Soviet Union. And the Joint Chiefs of Staff had voted that if the ships did cross that line, that we should go to nuclear first strike to maintain our credibility.
And they crossed and?
Well, the fact is they did cross, and the Joint Chiefs reconvened and voted to go to nuclear first strike and told Kennedy that he should strike right now.
How did Kennedy react to the threat of nuclear war?
Well, according to the people that were there with him, is that he was stunned at that moment. He had come to that critical moment of history that everyone had feared, and he was being told by his Joint Chiefs that he should strike out completely against the Soviet Union. He was in his rocking chair, and apparently a tear came to his eye, and he said, I simply will not be the one that does this. And he immediately ordered all U.S. nuclear forces to stand down. This moment was what we call in kind of religious circles a metanoia, almost an experience that transported Kennedy to a different level of insight into the problems that had been being created by this Cuban plan.
Did Khrushchev really want a nuclear war?
No, it appears, James.
I have read every letter back and forth from Kennedy. They are in the National Archives. You can read them. There's so many of them that's amazing. One of them says, a letter from President Kennedy to Nikita Khrushchev dated October 22, 1962. Dear Mr. Chairman, a copy of the statement I am making tonight concerning developments in Cuba and the reaction of my government thereto has been handed to your ambassador in Washington. In view of the gravity of the developments to which I refer, I want you to know immediately and accurately the position of my government in this matter. In our discussions and exchanges on Berlin and other international questions, the one thing that has most concerned me is the possibility that your government would not correctly understand the will and determination of the United States in any given situation, since I have not assumed that you or any other sane man would, in this nuclear age, deliberately plunge the world into war which it is crystal clear no country could win. and which could only result in catastrophic consequences to the whole world, including the aggressor. At our meeting in Vienna and subsequently, I expressed our readiness and desire to find, through peaceful negotiation, a solution to any and all problems that divide us. At the same time, I made clear that in view of the objectives of the ideology to which you adhere, the United States could not tolerate any action on your part which in a major way disturbed the existing overall balance of power in this world. I stated that an attempt to force abandonment of our responsibilities and commitments to Berlin would constitute such an action, and that the United States would resist with all power at its command. It was in order to avoid any incorrect assessment on the part of your government with respect to Cuba that I publicly stated that if certain developments in Cuba took place, my government would do whatever must be done to protect its own security and that of its allies. Moreover, the Congress adopted a resolution expressing its support of this declared policy. Despite this, the rapid development of long-range missile bases and other offensive weapon systems in Cuba has proceeded. I must tell you, Mr. Khrushchev, that the United States is determined that this threat to the security of this hemisphere will be removed. At the same time, I wish to point out that the action we are taking is the minimum necessary to remove the threat to the security of the nations of this hemisphere. The fact of this minimum response should not be taken as a basis, however, for any misjudgment on your part. I hope that your government will refrain from any action which would widen or deepen this already grave crisis, and that we can resume the path of peaceful negotiations. Sincerely, John Fitzgerald Kennedy, President of the United States. That was the one that really moved me. Now, there is a response to that, but you have to realize this was barely a month after what happened at the Bay of Pigs. Do you see what I'm saying? So I've done extensive research on this. I haven't just said, okay. I don't do that. I actually go into the National Archives and dig. I've actually gone out in my own life to the courthouse, looked up in the archives of the grand jury to see if I could find the all right. Here comes a letter to Khrushchev from Kennedy the following day. Dear Mr. President, I have just received your letter and have also acquainted myself with the text of your speech of October 22nd regarding Cuba. I must say frankly that the measures indicated in your statement constitute a serious threat to peace and to the security of nations. The United States has openly taken the path of grossly violating the United Nations Charter, the path of violating international norms of freedom of navigation on the high seas, the path of aggressive actions both against Cuba and the Soviet Union. The statement by the government of the United States of America can only be regarded as undisguised interference in the internal affairs of the Republic of Cuba, the Soviet Union, and other states. The United Nations Charter and the international norms give no right to any state to institute in international waters the inspection of vessels bound for the shores of the Republic of Cuba. That's the Bay of Pigs, okay? And naturally, neither can we recognize the right of the United States to establish control over armaments which are necessary for the Republic of Cuba to strengthen its defense capability. That's where we were involved in shipping them to them. We reaffirm that the armaments which are in Cuba, regardless of the classification to which they may belong, are intended solely for defensive purposes in order to secure the Republic of Cuba against the attack of an aggressor. I hope that the United States government will display wisdom and renounce the actions pursued by you, which may lead to catastrophic consequences for world peace. Sincerely, Nikita Khrushchev. Pretty threatening sounding, huh? Well, he writes back. Dear Mr. Khrushchev, I have received your letter of October 23rd. I think you will recognize that the steps which started the current chain of events was the action of your government in secretly furnishing offensive weapons to Cuba. We will be discussing this matter in the Security Council. In the meantime, I am concerned that we both show prudence and do nothing to allow events to make situations more difficult. I hope that you will issue immediately the necessary instructions to your ships to observe the terms of the quarantine, the basis of which established the vote of the Organization of American States this afternoon, and which will go into effect at 1400 hours Greenwich time. Sincerely, JFK. Dear Mr. President, I have received your letter dated October 23rd, and I have studied it, and I am now answering you. Just imagine, Mr. President, that we had presented you with the conditions of an ultimatum which you have presented to us. How would you have reacted? I think that you would be indignant at such a step on our part, and this would have been understandable to us. In presenting us with these conditions, Mr. President, you have flung a challenge at us. You have asked us to do this. By what right do you have to do this? Our ties with the Republic of China, Cuba, like our relations with other states, regardless of what kind of state they may be, concern only the two countries which these relations exist. You, Mr. President, are not declaring a quarantine, but rather are setting forth an ultimatum and threatening that if we do not give in to your demands, you will use force. You are no longer appealing to reason, but you are trying to intimidate us. No, Mr. President, I will not agree to this, and I think that in your own heart that you recognize I'm correct. I am convinced that in my place you would act the same way. You wish to compel us to renounce the rights that every sovereign state enjoy. You are trying to legislate in question of international law, and you are violating the universally accepted norms of that law, and you are doing this all not only out of hatred for Cuban people and its government, but also because of the considerations of the elected campaign of the United States. What morality, what law can justify such an approach by an American government to international affairs? Therefore, Mr. President, if you coolly weigh the situation which has developed, not giving way to passion, you will understand that the Soviet Union cannot fail to reject the arbitrary demands of the United States. We have everything necessary. Well, here's the last one. We will then be forced on our part to take measures we consider necessary and adequate to protect our rights. We will not retreat one step, and we have everything necessary to do so. A letter to Castro from Cuba. Dear Comrade Khrushchev, this is from Castro. Given the analysis of the situation and the reports which have reached us, number one, consider an attack to be almost imminent within the next 24 to 72 hours. There are two possible variants. The first and most probable one is the air attack against certain objectives with the limited aim of destroying them. You can be sure that we will resist with determination whatever the case. The Cuban people's morale is extremely high, and the people will confront aggression heroically. I would like to now express my own personal opinion. If the second variant takes place and the imperialists invade Cuba with the aim of occupying it, the dangers of their aggressive policy are so great that after such an invasion, the Soviet Union must never allow circumstances in which the imperialists could carry out a nuclear first strike against it. I tell you this because I believe that the imperialist aggressiveness makes them extremely dangerous, and that if they manage to carry out an invasion of Cuba, a brutal act of violation of universal and moral law, then that would be the moment to eliminate the danger forever. However harsh and however terrible the solution, there will be no other. You have been and are a tireless defender of peace, and I understand that these moments, when the results of your superhuman efforts are so seriously threatened, must be bitter for you. We will maintain our hopes for saving the peace until the last moment, and we are ready to contribute to this in any way we can. But at the same time, we are serene and ready to confront a situation which we see as real and imminent. I convey to you the infinite gratitude and recognition of the Cuban people to the Soviet people, who have been so generous and fraternal, along with our profound gratitude and admiration to you personally. We wish you success with the enormous task and the great responsibility which is in your hands. Sincerely, fraternally, Fidel Castro. A letter to Khrushchev, to Castro from Khrushchev. Dear Comrade Fidel Castro, October 28, 1962. Our message to President Kennedy, October 27th, allows for a solution to the problems in your favor, defending Cuba from an invasion, from an outbreak of such a war. Kennedy's answer, which you obviously know, offers United States guarantees that they will not only invade Cuba with their own forces, but they will not allow their allies to do so. Now, here's what happened. All this was going on, blah, 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 right? Talking to Fidel, da-da, 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 da-da. In the meantime, the CIA goes over his head. Fuck him. We're going to do what we want to do. So came the invasion of the Bay of Pigs. Now, do you realize what this could have done?
The travesty would have been is that he had ordered the ships to stop, but they had not gotten the communication, or they had just gone across the line completely by mistake. So it would have been a horrible tragedy to have this thing happen that way.
Kennedy had come face to face with nuclear annihilation. He didn't want that to happen again. So he assured Khrushchev and Castro that the U.S. would keep its hands off Cuba. He ordered the CIA to stop interfering with Cuba. When they refused, he sent in the FBI to shut down their training camps.
They started dumping on Kennedy for shutting down, attacking these bases, and shutting them down and calling him a traitor.
Kennedy continued to make enemies as he pulled back from world confrontation. He put in the hotline to Moscow. He signed the Nuclear Test Ban Treaty. That shook up the military-industrial complex. He ordered U.S. troops out of Vietnam, and that shook them up even more.
The idea was 1,000 guys out early, and then eventually everyone out by 1965. And he disagreed with his advisors. It was their opinion that we had to send combat troops, and if we didn't send combat troops, that Laos would fall and South Vietnam would fall. They even questioned the viability of India, Australia, and Japan. The whole structure of East Asia, they said, would be threatened if we allowed this to happen. So they were very serious about this.
But Kennedy was insistent. He wanted us out of Vietnam. He also decided he could no longer trust the CIA.
After the Bay of Pigs, Kennedy had decided to change the whole structure of how this government would carry out covert operations. And so he was transferring covert operations directly to the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Shortly after that, he fired Allen Dulles, who had been the Director of Central Intelligence since
He fires Allen Dulles, who had been the director of the CIA for over 20 years. Fired. See, what you have to realize is in this country, when you piss off the establishment hits back. But the establishment can hit back a hell of a lot harder than you can hit them. I experienced this in my own lifetime. Victor thumbed his nose at the illegal government tactics in Dallas County, and they said, "Really? Really? You're going to thumb your nose at us? Watch this. Zonk." Boom. There had recently been a little dinner where everybody was supposed to go and give out their little... They had to bow and kiss the ring of the head of the bail bond board, who was John Wiley Price and still is. You kiss his ring and you give him a $5,000 check. Well, naturally, Victor, being a man of honor, said, "Fuck that. I'm not going to do that shit. Fuck him. I'm not going to kiss his ass. He's an asshole." Really? Zonk. So although you can be, I'm trying to open something, although you are a good man of honor, you don't mess with the establishment because they will zonk you. Zonkerino. In fact, there is a online, there is an article that came out in the Dallas Morning News. I just popped this little thing. I'll tell you about it later. That says, blah, 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 the bail bond board, blah, 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 the bail bond board. Well, the bail bond board decided right after that happened that they were going to clean up Dallas County, the bail bond people. And I believe to this day, and I'm going to write a book about it, that began the coup d'etat to get rid of Vic. Vic, a man in office, in power, in business for 30 years. 30 years. Not 3. Who had over 4.2 million on the streets. Who was the only bondsman in Dallas that wrote off straight cash. All that means is he was self-insured. Most bail bondsmen work under an insurance company. They write the bond, the insurance company takes the fall, they get 70%, we get 30%. Victor was smarter than that. He wrote off of cash. He put up an original $50,000 with them, and they gave him 10% power, and from then on, about every 2 to 3 weeks, he put up more cash, and more cash, and more cash. He was a machine. He had the best location in town, and he had the most business. He was a force to be reckoned with, and we had more money than we know what to do with. Zonk. The little coup d'etat started up when in 2011, a Dallas Morning News article came out that said, Dallas County Bail Bond Board swears to clean up the bondsman. Well, I believe that was them setting the stage to zonk Vic, to zonk him. And they did. And it was all done at the hands of the snakiest pieces of shit you've ever known in your life. John Wiley Price, our man downtown. Oh, Debbie only hates him because he's black. Right. Some of Debbie's best friends are black. When you hate blacks, you hate all blacks. It just so happens his asshole was black. And he's a snake. Ooh, you've never known a snake like this son of a bitch. I'm talking, ooh, it'll make you shimmy, he's such a snake. Dirty, rotten scoundrel he is. And he said, oh yeah? You and your little white wife? Zonk. And they did. He said to him, I'm going to make an example of you so that other bondsmen will never do what you did, and looked him straight in his eyes. And I wasn't allowed to be in there. Victor said, I am not going to let you in there, because I would have gone nuts. I would have gone nuts at what they did. Because I just cannot stand back. And to this day, I believe that right after that happened, the angels all got together and had a 62-page federal fucking indictment come down on John Wiley fucking Price. Nana, fuck you. And he's going to go to federal prison for the rest of his life. Yay! 62 pages of information came down. 62 pages. Not 6, not 2. And he was like, oh. And I was walking by him one day and I said, hey there. And I winked at him. Because he didn't beat us. Because when you cash a ticket that big, you cash a ticket. And then you get people working for you that know what to do with it. We're not stupid. We're not stupid. Okay? We know how to do things. So, to John Wiley Price, you know, I don't do this often, but to you, John Wiley Price, I'm going to take a quick break, and I'm going to dedicate a song to you. And this is from your old pal Debbie, okay? Just to tell you how much I love you. Right? And it is by the never the popular CeeLo Green, as you all know. And this goes to you, John Wiley Price, wherever you are. Even if it's 20 years and one of your children are out there listening that you never paid child support for because you probably never even knew that you had it. Or maybe it's to one of your associates who went down with you. How does it feel, John Wiley Price, to be stuck in federal prison, to be somebody's bitch and get sold for cigarettes, huh? How does that feel?
Wasn't enough. I'm like, fuck you and fuck her too. Said if I was richer, I'd still be richer. Now ain't that some shit? Ain't that some shit? And although there's pain in my chest, I still wish you the best. With the fuck you. Yeah, I'm sorry, I can't afford a Ferrari, but that don't mean I can't get you there. I guess she's an Xbox. I'm more Atari, but the way you play your game ain't fair. I picture the fool that falls in love with you. Oh, she's a gold digger. Well, just don't you should know, nigga. Ooh, I've got some news for you. Yeah, go on and run tell your little boy free. See you driving around town with the girl I love, and I'm like, fuck you. I guess the change in my wasn't enough. I'm like, fuck you and fuck her too. Said if I was richer, I'd still be richer. Ain't that some shit? Ain't that some shit? And although there's pain in my chest, I still wish you the best. Fuck you.
There you go, John Wiley Price. When you're driving around town with the car that you've gotten from Delta Bonding, one of our biggest competitors. Wow, I wonder where you got that. That's because you're a snake. You're a criminal. You're a thief. You're a jerk. So see, it happens in all levels. Victor was in sort of a weird sense. He was a victim of that. You see what I'm saying? Now, they wouldn't have been stupid enough to kill him, because to kill him, I would inherit everything, and I would have really given him the finger. But there's times when you give the finger to the government, and you're right. You're totally right. I mean, he was a snake, and Victor and I discussed it, and I said, do what you want to do. And he was not about to go to that party and kiss the ring of John Wiley Price and give him $5,000. Okay? Fuck you, he said. I don't do anything wrong. I run my business. I'm not going to kiss your ass to stay in business. Well, gazonk. The government can have more power. They have ways of... And to this day, there's people that know what happened. Ask Jones. Jones knew what happened at DSO. A lot of people knew what happened. We got scores of letters and stuff. Man, I'm sorry, Vic. You got fucked. Because there were 26 licensed bondsmen at the time that my husband got disbarred. We did extensive research. We spent $10,000 with private investigators who went to every county in Texas and found out that every one of the bail bondsmen owed a total of over $2 million in outstanding forfeitures. Every licensed bondsman. Okay? Including the sitting city judge, who was a former bondsman. He owed him. The statutes in the state of Texas say that the bondsman can file, anybody can file a complaint with the Dallas Bail Bond Board against a bail bondsman. We did that. Nobody ever answered. Victor ran into Jones one day. He goes, what happened to those complaints? He goes, we looked at them, took a look at them. Nah, we just threw them out. What are you going to do? Sue them? How many of you ever heard the world famous song, I Fought the Law and the Law Won? If you've never heard the song by Bobby Fuller, I Fought the Law and the Law Won. Vic fought the law and the law won. He fought the law and the law won. So what we did is we devised a plan. I know what we'll do, said our lawyer. We'll sue him. And we'll sue him for what's it called? Seeing that Victor was the only Hispanic bondsman at the time, we'll claim racial violation. Well, guess what happened to the case? It landed in the court. See, when you file a case, it's a roll of the dice on whose court it lands in. It landed in the perfect court. But what do you know? It got moved over to the best friend of John, Wiley, a Price. And it was thrown out. How about that? How about that? Who would have ever thunk it, right? Law won. I mean, there is correspondence. One day when I write a book, it's going to all come out in the book. Correspondence between Vic, bondsmans, Vic, head of the Bail Bond, of the Bail Bond Association of Texas, back and forth. I mean, I've got stuff that you would not believe. He was led to attorneys that were set up by them, blah, 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 blah. It's unbelievable. Pretty unbelievable. That is one reason why I'm so involved with this JFK conspiracy, because I know the ruthlessness that the government can be. It can be more ruthless than anything. It can be more ruthless than criminals. Why? Because they're untouchable. Sue me, they say. What the fuck? You can't win. You can't win. So I decided that upon dealing with the situation, that we would do this in the right way, and that would be the way that somebody, not me or Vic, saw would be the right way, but that loved us and that wanted the best for us. And I told Victor, it's going to be best that we hand this over to somebody else to look at this and make the decisions for us. And that's what they did. And that's where we're at today. And I can assure you that as of this moment, I'm not wanting for anything. Do you see what I'm saying? Because that's all they had in mind, was to take him down to where he would be broke. They failed. But we're not stupid enough to shove it back in their face. We do it now behind their back.
That was a signal to the CIA of what Kennedy was going to do, or what he had done.
Kennedy was changing the status quo. The whispers started. From big business to the military. From disgruntled intelligence agents to anti-Castro Cubans and their right-wing supporters.
Kill Castro!
Kennedy had to go.
We'll get Castro. We'll kill Kennedy. That's who will kill Kennedy!
The mechanism was already in place. S-Force was available for hire, waiting for its next political target.
And they resolved at that point, then between May and June of 1963, that they were going to kill President Kennedy. And they were going to kill him either in Miami, because he was scheduled to come to Miami and have an open car parade there, or in Texas. And that was the decision that they made, to go forward and to kill him.
In this segment, you'll see the evidence that Kennedy was killed in a conspiracy using more than one gunman. Our first guest is Dr. Cyril Wecht, a world-renowned forensic pathologist. He has been the coroner for Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and past president for the American Academy of Forensic Sciences. He was the first non-government pathologist to examine the medical evidence concerning President Kennedy's assassination. Dr. Weck, how does the evidence prove that there was more than one gunman?
First, Mr. Jones, we have to understand the predicament that the government found itself in. When they analyzed the alleged murder weapon, the Mannlicher Carcano, non-automatic bolt-action weapon developed before World War II in Italy, they determined that it took 2.3 seconds from shot to shot without allowing time for repositioning, re-aiming, and a moving target. Then when they examined the Zapruder film, frame by frame, they saw that John Connally was completely non-reactive, 1.5 to 1.6 seconds after Kennedy had already been hit in the throat. And that is what gave birth to the single bullet theory, that one shot came through Kennedy's back, through his neck, then through Connally's chest, through Connally's wrist, and to Connally's left thigh. And that is what permitted them to say that Oswald was a sole assassin. And if you see right here, there is John Connally's hat. I'm going to clear that a moment so we can first see his face. You'll see that there is no reaction whatsoever. Now, look at the white Stetson hat he's holding in his right wrist. Look at Kennedy, of course, having been struck. 1.5 to 1.6 seconds have elapsed, and John Connally, according to the single bullet theory of the Warren Commission, has been shot through the chest. The right wrist has been fractured. The nerve that permits the thumb to hold things in apposition with the fingers has been severed. The bullet's gone into the thigh, and he sits there totally unreacting.
No, you might have covered this, but why couldn't one bullet have hit Connally and Kennedy?
The bullet that was found on the stretcher at the hospital, the hero of the single bullet scenario, in its original weight was 161 grains. The bullet that was found weighed 158.6 grains, a loss of 1.5% of the original weight of the bullet. And yet, when you look at the
blah, 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 blah. He wasn't killed by Lee Harvey Oswald. He was the patsy. He was put in place. He was made out to look like he loved Castro. They even videoed him passing out the flyers. Why would somebody videotape a nothing man passing out flyers? Think about that. Use your head. Use your freaking head and think about what happened. He was killed with a conspiracy that I know, that Lyndon Baines Johnson gave his approval of. He hated Kennedy. He despised Robert Kennedy. Despised him. But I don't believe he really did put the pieces in place. I don't believe he set up the chessboard. I believe that he sort of gave the nod for the underbelly to take over. I believe the main characters in the assassination of John F. Kennedy was the CIA out of Louisiana under the direction of Clay Shaw. Period. There's too much testimony. There's too many witnesses. 177 people were killed mysteriously. That were too risky, that were running their mouths. If you ran your mouth, if I lived back then and I had this medium right now, I'd be dead tomorrow. Dead as a doornail. For some weird way. The CIA is a covert. It is the mafia. It's the legal mafia. They are very covert. They're very sneaky. I once met a man that worked for the CIA, and I was scared to death when I found out what he did. I was selling a motorcycle. Man comes over with his wife and his son. What is that noise? Can I hear that noise? I think it's raining. Let me look. Yeah, it's raining outside. Man comes over. He's looking at the motorcycle. And when he bends over, I went, oh! he had a 9mm on him, and I said, he's got a gun. They were like, what? He's got a gun. And they come into the house to talk about it and everything, and I said, I couldn't help but notice that you carry a gun. And he whipped out his card, and I still have it. It says Central Intelligence Agency out of Fort Worth, Texas, and he flew a helicopter for them. A helicopter that could see into people's houses, which I eventually was of the opinion it was a violation of civil rights, a violation of privacy. But, CIA doesn't go by the rules. And I've called him several times about stuff. We became friends, so to speak. And I've called and asked him questions and stuff like that. But they're pretty spooky people. And they are of a very quiet boys club. And I guess girls, if you want to be a dickless Tracy. But anyway. And his wife was real sweet, and she would talk to me. And it was really an interesting situation. But I'll never give out his name. You would have to push bamboo shoots under my fingernails to possibly get me to give out his name. I would never do that. He was an interesting person, but he has since moved on, which is why I can tell you what he did. He has since moved on from that. Neat guy, but no, you don't mess with the CIA. Let me tell you what, let's go forward till they get down to the final synopsis, because it's kind of boring right now. But here is the final, how it all went down, right about here.
Murder Incorporated. That's the people. In fact, they call them mechanics. You see a man on the phone that simply says where, and they say in the south, and when, in the fall. And all right, thank you.
And on November 22nd, it was to be for them just another assignment. It had rained earlier that day, but by noon, it had stopped.
You're dealing with people who are trained to do this in the first place. They don't need bonuses and pay. They have access. They are assured they can leave.
The fourth shot came from the Deltex. It narrowly missed, hit the curb, wounding a bystander. The fifth and sixth shots were fired almost simultaneously, from the depository and from the picket fence. Both hit Kennedy in the head. One from above, moving him forward. Then an instant later, one from the...
Wait a minute, let me back up. I bumped over that too much. This is my final summation as spoken by James Earl Jones on what I believe happened that day. What I'm just convinced of it, like I'm convinced I'm sitting next to this poster.
With the proper equipment and with access to the place and with the parade route set up to come right by where they are at a very slow pace, it's a cinch to kill the president, and they did.
Kennedy's motorcade was arranged to make two turns, taking him directly into a triangulation. The first shot came from the picket fence. It hit Kennedy in the throat. The second shot came from the Deltex building, next to the book depository. It entered Kennedy's back. The third shot came from the southwest corner of the book depository, 7th floor. It hit Conley. The fourth shot came from the Deltex. It narrowly missed, hit the curb, wounding a bystander. The fifth and sixth shots were fired almost simultaneously, from the depository and from the picket fence. Both hit Kennedy in the head. One from above, moving him forward. Then an instant later, one from the front, tossing him back. One from above, moving him forward. Then, an instant later, one from the front, forcing him back. Now, only one question remains. Who ordered it? Our experts believe those orders came not from Lyndon Johnson, not from J. Edgar Hoover, not from the CIA as an agency, or even the Pentagon, but from a group of individuals, a power elite. These people knew how to turn on S-Force. They knew how to turn S-Force against their own president.
Look what's happened here. This group of guys that we have developed over these years in this ultra-secret program to kill Castro has killed the president because he betrayed them.
The story of the Kennedy assassination and the story of other scandals that we've had in our government are a kind of karma coming home, a kind of retribution for what we did to other governments.
This is Lyndon Johnson talking, the President of the United States. He said, we operate a murder incorporated. Johnson said we operate it. He didn't say we used to operate it. He said we operate it. Now, for President Johnson to say that there was a murder incorporated involved in the death of Kennedy, you can be sure he was not talking about Lee Harvey Oswald. He knew what he was talking about. And that's how Kennedy was killed.
We have discovered that hiring assassins is an established procedure, a way of doing business, and that we're not the only country to do it. But in our case, this procedure was turned against our own president. This Special Operations Unit, this group we have referred to in this program as S-Force, it is their very existence that is the key to the conspiracy to assassinate JFK. Mr. Sheehan, what can be done to stop S-Force?
Well, one of the things, James, that we have to do is to have a thorough investigation of the setting up of this group, who was in it, and what crimes they've committed, and hold them responsible for it. And there needs to be a thorough investigation by a special prosecutor to investigate their connection to the assassination of President Kennedy and, of course, to the Watergate burglary, to show that it was their connection to this group and Howard Hughes that was being looked for.
Mr. Marchetti, how do we harness the illegal covert operations of the CIA?
Well, supposedly by law, mainly through Congress. But right now there are two bills before Congress that are designed to revise the intelligence system, and they allow for the same things to continue on.
Now remember, you're not listening to a podcaster here. You're listening to a former Joint Chief of Staff.
The President is still allowed to have the right to, and the sole discretion to carry out covert action without oversight.
We have a telephone question. The caller is Debbie from Clearwater.
Good evening. I recall when the assassination took place that it was announced that the files or the information about the assassination would not be released. Why did the people of our country tolerate that and the secrecy of the files and the information regarding the assassination at that time?
Well, the problem is that most of the American people don't feel that we have anything to do with decisions that are made by our government. Most people just come once every 4 years and vote for a president that's offered to us by the Republican or Democratic Party, neither one of whom we're particularly pleased by. The people have to learn to take control, and that's why they can call in and demand that these files be reopened, that a special prosecutor be assigned to investigate the existence of this political assassination group that was established back in 1960, back when the president and vice president authorized political assassinations. This has to be looked into. It has to be brought to light. The American people have to take charge of our government. That's why they allow things like this to go on. The time is over to let this stuff go on any longer.
Hello?
Yes, Rick. Go ahead, please.
Yes, I'd like to know why it's taken so long for this information and the truth to be exposed.
Well, in the first place, it hasn't been exposed yet, and I don't think it ever will be. Secrecy in government is designed for one purpose and one purpose only. Not to keep the enemy or the opposition from knowing what's going on, but to keep the American people from knowing what is going on. And all the evidence that exists, or might have existed, that would implicate the government in Kennedy's assassination, you can be sure that evidence is now destroyed. So even if everything is released now, the chances of solving the Kennedy assassination and attaching the blame to the guilty parties is almost impossible.
You've heard people say that Lee Harvey Oswald was set up as the fall guy. Wouldn't you like to know what the KGB says about Oswald? Meet a high-ranking secret agent from the KGB, a man never before seen on television, Colonel Nichiporenko. In 1963, he was an officer in the counterintelligence in Mexico and met with Oswald at the Russian embassy 2 months before the assassination.
When I met Oswald in Mexico City in 1963, the discussion was...
We are Boris and we have Squirrel, and we do not speak to American peoples. We are Russians. We are Squirrel. Moose and Squirrel. Stop it, Fufu. 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 Don't ever buy a Basset Hound. Something's going on Skype. I don't know what's going on. Let me check on my chat room, see what's going on over there. Do. Stabby McThuggy Pops is there. CSI. No, I don't watch CSI. I do research at libraries. Anyway, we are Moose and Squirrel. I used to love listening to Bullwinkle do that. What was it? It was Natasha. It was on Bullwinkle. Bullwinkle, it was Natasha. What was her name? Natasha and something. Oh, they were so freaking funny. They played Russians. They said Moose and Squirrel. I don't know. I'm trying to see if I can find a link to. I mean, a piece of their audio. If it'll come up here, I don't know if it will not. You missed most of the show. I think you will. Here we go. Here is Boris and Natasha. Boris and Natasha.
Hi, I'm Rocky, and this is Bullwinkle. Who are you?
Yodeldly-doddly-hoddly-ho! Gentlemen, allow me to introduce myself. 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 Boy, where am I? Mein Kampf. Gentlemen, I'm Clarence Derenoff, attorney at law. Ace Rickenboris at your service. Sir Hilary Pushemoff at your service. Sir Thomas Lipin Boris at your service. It is I, Swami Ben Boris. Hemlock Soames at your service. Your crime is my crime. This is my assistant. And this is my wife. Allow me to introduce my English assistant. That is famous Indian guy, Lady Ellen. Princess Bubbling Spring that runs in the meadow. Dr.
Wait a minute. Did y'all hear a name up here at the beginning?
Allow me to introduce myself. 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 Boy, where am I? Mein Kampf. Gentlemen, I'm Clarence Derenoff, attorney at law. Ace Rickenboris at your service. Sir Hilary Pushemoff at your service. Sir Thomas Lipin Boris at your service. It is I, Swami Ben Boris. Hemlock Soames at your service. Your crime is my crime. This is my assistant. And this is my wife. Allow me to introduce my English assistant. That is famous Indian guy.
He said Hillary ambush you off the cliff.
Boy. Where am I? Mein Kampf. Gentlemen, I'm Clarence Derenoff, attorney at law. Ace Rickenboris at your service. Sir Hilary Pushemoff at your service. Sir Hemlock Soames at your service. Your crime is my crime.
So now you see where I get my Russian accent. I think I got to drop out of that. I think. Sir Hillary pushed them off the cliff for you. Oh, what the hell? Let it play.
This is my assistant. And this is my wife. Allow me to introduce my English assistant. That is famous Indian guy, Lady Ellen. Princess Bubbling Spring that runs in the meadow. Dr. Watkins.
Cheerio, y'all. Call me Bubbles.
But you two are really... Toto, don't be blabbermouth, you blabbermouth.
I just asked Mr. Midnight Movie, what in the wild, wild world of sports is going on here? Oh, boy. Today? What? Wait a minute. Oh, look what I did. Goose called. Everybody's called. I just turned on my Skype for the first time. But I'm really too tired to take any calls tonight. I'm just beat. It's not that I'm in the mood. I'm just tired. Just tired. That's all. All right, I was reading an email from somebody. So that's it for tonight. That's all I have. I mean, I could keep going, but I'm tired. I mean, we've been on late the last few nights, and I think it's just exhausting me, to be honest with you. But I'm all right. What is this piece of equipment I have? I mean, this piece of audio. Oh. I'm an icon? Oh, please, Jesus Christ. No one has ever seen me. Then you're not an icon.
You have an incoming call from Mr.
I can't
Midnight
take
Movie,
a call. I'm too
JT.
tired. What? I'm tired.
Oh, really? You going to bed?
What is this bitch saying? I'm an icon. Nobody has seen me. Uh-oh, is she listening to me?
No, she's listening.
Oh, she said, hi, Debbie. I'm kind of a unique opportunity. No one is offering anal. What? What the fuck? Who is this chick? Is that the chick with the big boobs?
Yeah.
Well, why don't y'all get her to do something with you or something?
Well,
I didn't think she was that attractive. Besides, somebody with that kind of money just doesn't go around throwing it around. Not in today's world.
no, fuck no.
Is that JP typing?
That's me.
Oh. Yeah, I'm tired. I'm going to go to bed after I take a nap. Take a bath.
Is the show done?
It's fixing to be right now.
Okay, so you want to go to Betty Bye.
Listen to Boris.
Hello. Allow me to introduce myself. Boy, where am I? Mein Kampf. Gentlemen, I'm Clarence Derenoff, attorney at law.
I'm Clarence Derenoff, attorney at law. This is my assistant, Mr. Midnight Movies. Ouch. Ouch. Something went wrong with that connection, so I ended it. Love you. Kisses to Mr. Midnight Movie and Jewish producer. My lovely yin to my yang. What? Get out of that chat. Whatever. Whatever. Who wants to hear the last letter from, where were we? We left off at October 28th, Dear Fidel Castro from Khrushchev. And the next one in line is from Castro to Khrushchev back, and then Khrushchev's message to Kennedy, letter to Khrushchev, end of the Cuban naval quarantine. Letter from Kennedy to, okay, the last letter was... it wasn't a letter, it was a message. I read the letter from Khrushchev to Castro, then the next one from Castro to Khrushchev. We'll skip that one and we'll go to Khrushchev's message to Kennedy. From Nikita Khrushchev, message to John F. Kennedy. I received your message of the 27th of October, and I am grateful for your appreciation of the responsibility that you bear for world peace and security. The Soviet government has ordered the dismantling of bases and the dispatch of equipment to the USSR a few days ago. Havana was shelled, allegedly by Cuban enemies, yet someone must have armed them for this purpose. Even a British cargo ship was shelled. Cubans want to be masters of their own country. The threat of invasion has upset the Cuban people. I wish to again state that the Soviet government has offered Cuba only defensive weapons. I appreciate your assurance that the United States will not invade Cuba.
You have an incoming call from Mr. Midnight
Guys,
Movie,
I don't feel
JP.
like I don't feel like doing anything tonight on the phone. I'm tired.
You hung up without saying goodbye like JP.
No, there was a real loud noise and it hurt my ears, and I thought maybe you were just not. You were typing to somebody.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. No big deal. You know I love both of you. I'm just tired tonight.
Go to bed.
I think I'm going to do that. Hi, JP.
He left for a bit.
Okay.
Well,
just keep talking to that fat lady.
I'm sick of the morons. Hey, I sent you a tweet, but yeah, you listen to it if you decide.
I'm going to watch it during my bath. I'm going to click it in the bathtub and watch it.
Will do. Tell me what you think if you
I'm
want.
going to. It looks really interesting.
Later.
Bye. That was my buddy Mr. Midnight Movies. Okay, where were we? Okay. I wish to again state that the Soviet government has offered Cuba only defense. Okay, blah, 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 blah. We must not allow the situation to deteriorate. Eliminate hotbeds of tension, and we must see to it that no other conflicts occur which might lead to a world nuclear war. We are ready to continue to exchange views on relations between NATO and the Warsaw Bloc, disarmament, and other issues of peace and war. And this is in the National Archives, online National Archives. John F. Kennedy's creed was, I believe in human dignity as the source of national purpose, in human liberty as the source of national action, the human heart as the source of national compassion, and in the human mind as the source of our invention and our ideas. It is, I believe, the faith in our fellow citizen as an individual and as people that lie at the heart of the liberal faith. For liberalism is not much a party creed or a set of fixed platform promises as it is an attitude of mind and heart. A faith in man's ability through the experiences of his reason and judgment to increase for himself and his fellow man the amount of justice and freedom and brotherhood which all human life deserves. And I think that is just beautiful. I mean, I told you in the beginning, the reason I do this in memory of people of this country that have cried at the thought of this man. I mean, the saddest thing that just breaks my heart is to watch him sitting in that limo and just getting his brains blowed out. Just boom, boom, boom. You know, this was somebody's son. I mean, come on. This was somebody's freaking son, somebody's flesh and blood that they were just treating like a goddamn turkey. Just shooting him to just boom, boom. You know, that's just so wrong. It's so wrong on so many levels. It's just so bad. So bad. It just makes me puke. You know what I mean? I just hate it. And so it is with this I close probably my entire thing on JFK. I close with this. And I will see you guys next time I do it. You never know.
Hey, fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. I pledge you that we shall neither commit nor provoke aggression, that we shall neither flee nor invoke the threat of force, that we shall never negotiate out of fear, and we shall never fear to negotiate. Terror is not a new weapon. Throughout history, it has been used by those who could not prevail, either by persuasion or example. But inevitably, they fail, either because men are not afraid to die for a life worth living, or because the terrorists themselves came to realize that free men cannot be frightened by threats, and that aggression would meet its own response. And it is in the light of that history that every nation today should know, be he friend or foe, that the United States has both the will and the weapons to join free men in standing up to their responsibilities.
All free men, wherever they may live, are citizens of Berlin. And therefore, as a free man, I take pride in the words, Ich bin ein Berliner.
The path we have chosen for the present is full of hazards, as all paths are. But it is the one most consistent with our character and courage as a nation and our commitments around the world. The cost of freedom is always high, but Americans have always paid it. And one path we shall never choose, and that is the path of surrender or submission.
We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other thing, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win, and the others too.
I believe in an America where the separation of church and state is absolute, where no Catholic prelate would tell the president, should he be Catholic, how to act, and no Protestant minister would tell his parishioners for whom to vote, where no church or church school is granted any public funds or political preference, and where no man is denied public office merely because his religion differs from the president who might appoint him or the people who might elect him.
I have therefore chosen this time and place to discuss a topic on which ignorance too often abounds and the truth too rarely perceived, and that is the most important topic on earth, peace. What kind of a peace do I mean, and what kind of a peace do we seek? Not a Pax Americana enforced on the world by American weapons of war, not the peace of the grave or the security of the slave. I am talking about genuine peace, the kind of peace that makes life on earth worth living, the kind that enables men and nations to grow and to hope and build a better life for their children. Not merely peace for Americans, but peace for all men and women. Not merely peace in our time, but peace in all time.
We are confronted primarily with a moral issue. It is as old as the Scriptures and is as clear as the American Constitution. The heart of the question is whether all Americans are to be afforded equal rights and equal opportunities. Whether we are going to treat our fellow Americans as we want to be treated. If an American, because his skin is dark, cannot eat lunch in a restaurant open to the public, if he cannot send his children to the best public school available, if he cannot vote for the public officials who represent him, if, in short, he cannot enjoy the full and free life which all of us want, then who among us would be content to have the color of his skin changed and stand in his place? Who among us would then be content with the counsels of patience and delay? 100 years of delay have passed since President Lincoln